Hello, hello. Welcome back to our second live stream. Thank you for everyone who joined us for the first live stream and who has rewatched that. I was pretty impressed on the participation. So remember, these live streams are for you. Feel free to jump in the comments. I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to give me some ideas of topics of what you want to hear about. So today we are talking a little bit about what's been heavy in the headlines, national media with these federal budget cuts that keep happening, and what that impact is going to look like in the North Central Washington area. We kind of had a little bit of taste of this during COVID when a lot of things were shut down. But this time is a little bit different, impacting our firefighters and a lot of our support for our natural resources. So we'll jump into that. And also I have a special guest. Today I've got Joe, am I going to slaughter your last name? Porreca? Anyways, he is down in the Claremont area in LA, and he has firsthand seen some of the devastation of these wildfires and how it's impacting areas and large areas. So anyways, I'm going to bring him in. Joe, hello, welcome.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for having me. This is excellent.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here today. And you have seen firsthand some of the effect of the devastation of wildfires and what's going on. And before we jump into that a little bit, I want to start out with just an article that is floating around. So I'm going to share that. Okay. Well, here's a clip.
The U.S. Forest and National Park Services were hit with major staffing cuts over the weekend. The administration fired about 3,400 recent or probationary hires with the U.S. Forest Service, meaning they're within the first year or two of employment. That's about 10% of its workforce. About 1,000 or 5% of National Park Service employees have also been let go. Popular tourist sites such as the Appalachian Trail, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Sequoia National Forest have been affected. The National Parks Conservation Association, a nonpartisan advocacy group, says the cuts will, quote, leave parks understaffed, facing tough questions about operating hours, public safety, and resource protection. Let's bring in Ashley Harrell. She's the National Parks Bureau Chief at SF Gate. She recently wrote an article about how these staff cuts have been impacting Yosemite specifically.
So there we have it. I mean, we're starting to see this across all of the Western states. And I know that we're starting to have cuts here in the Wenatchee area. The Wenatchee Forest Service just announced that 30 to 40, I can't remember exactly, people have been cut, and we just closed down one of our ranger districts. Have you been seeing or hearing anything about this down where you're at, Joe?
You know, where we are, I haven't heard anything too direct with the budget cuts and all the stuff that the newest administration is doing. I mean, thankfully, it hasn't had a quick and direct impact on us down here in the greater Los Angeles area. But with that being said, we do have a lot of national parks in California. There's national forests. I mean, I back up to a national forest. I mean, if you went behind the camera that I'm talking to right now and drove for 10 minutes, you'd be in a national forest. So obviously it still affects us quite a bit. And everybody's gonna have their own thoughts on what's going on with the budget cuts and constraints and things like that. But yeah, I tell you, I think, we were talking about this earlier today. One of the things that really alarmed me was the cuts to the VA and the VA crisis hotline, which it's pretty interesting to see what they're cutting, how they're cutting it, and why they're cutting it. And in your area, same with my area, obviously the whole fire thing and forestry and forest protection, it is a little bit concerning. And I do think people do have concerns about federal funds and what federal funds will be available or won't be available to help manage our forest land, and also, protect homeowners. Obviously, it's a big need, especially coming from experience that we just had about a month ago or a month and a half ago in the Altadena and Pacific Palisades area.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess right now we're just like skimming over a little bit with the Forest Service and the parks. It's a big deal for us in Central Washington. Chelan County, about 90% of the land is protected. And a lot of that is national forest. And so once we start talking about that little clip just talked a little bit about how the Forest Service is being impacted. We have a ranger station up by Lake Wenatchee that just closed down. And we got a little bit of a taste of this during COVID when we didn't have the park services and our forests turned into just litter, toilet paper everywhere. And what we see happen is these areas get closed. They get closed down, they get gated off, but the people still come. But there's no facilities for them and there's nobody taking care of it. And so that's a little bit of an impact. And to wrap this into real estate, this is kind of a real estate channel. So what I see in the future is as our campgrounds and natural resources get limited, we're going to start seeing more and more people investing in their own camp lots, essentially, and buying those second homes, in these camping areas. But that's not really why we're here today. Really, the big concern is the firefighting cuts. And I'm going to play another clip about how this is really going to impact insurance and mortgages. So give me a second here and I'll pull this clip up. Okay.
David Lazarus here in studio with us today, starting with the growing crisis in the insurance industry and the impact on mortgages. It's going to be really tough to buy a home.
What I'm about to share with everybody is just simply amazing. And the fact that the rest of the media hasn't picked up on it yet, I don't know. Maybe they were looking at the top line of what happened today and didn't pay attention to the lower stuff. What I'm talking about is Fed Chief Jerome Powell. He was testifying before the Senate Banking Committee today, mostly about interest rates. This is what he normally talks about. But in the question and answer period that followed, Minnesota Senator Tina Smith asked about the availability of mortgages in disaster-prone states like California. And the Fed chief, well, he stepped up on this, and here's what he had to say.
Both banks and insurance companies are pulling out of areas, coastal areas and things like that, or areas where there are a lot of fires. So what that is going to mean is that, if you fast forward 10 or 15 years, there are going to be regions of the country where you can't get a mortgage. There won't be ATMs. There won't, the banks won't have branches and things like that.
Let's just chew on that for a second. That is the head of America's central bank.
What do you know about this, Joe?
Well, I mean, obviously insurance is pivotal to getting a mortgage. And, for maybe just to provide a little context for some of those people. So in my area, so I'm in the greater Los Angeles area, and I'm about, 35 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, which really only puts me about, maybe 18 miles east of Altadena and the area that was really hit by fires. And we're already seeing issues with insurance. In fact, I just had I have a closing that was supposed to close today. It's not closing today. I'll give you one guess why it's not closing, Amanda.
Fire insurance.
Insurance, ding, ding, ding. And the buyer was able to obtain insurance. But now when I talk about a property that, we had difficulty obtaining insurance for, a lot of people think, okay, well, it must be a hillside property. It must be a property that's located next to open land or wild land or open space. No, this is a patio home. This is an attached home in a basically that's like in a condo complex. And they had a very difficult time getting insurance. They had to talk to multiple brokers. They finally got something. It was much more expensive than they anticipated. And it took a lot longer to get the insurance finalized because of everything that's going on. So we're already starting to see impacts from the insurance side of things when it comes to getting a mortgage and closing a real estate deal. Luckily, this home was insurable still, but if this home had been in an open area, wild lands, on a hillside, I don't know if they would have been able to get insurance, and it definitely would have been a problem. And I certainly think that Jerome Powell's contention and fear that there could be areas in the United States where you just cannot get insurance, and therefore you can't get a mortgage. I think that could happen. I don't think it's going to be a lot of homes. I don't think it's going to be a major area, but I think there are going to be areas very, very close to the coast or very close to the mountains or in the mountains where insurance companies are going to say, hey, if you want to live there, it's going to cost you 15 or 20 grand a year in insurance. I don't see any way around that, to be frank, especially here in California where we're prone to large fires.
Yeah, we started last summer, we started to see quite a few insurance agencies pull out of Central Washington. And a lot of our community Facebook pages were just full of people scrambling to find homeowners insurance. And then once they were getting those quotes, they were double what they had been paying before. When you go from paying $4,000 to $8,000 a year in homeowners insurance, that's a huge jump for a lot of people. And that was before these fires started even happening down in LA. I think it was just absolutely mind blowing to see a fairly large city-esque area, burn the way that did.
Yep. And I think that's a real wake up call, right? And I still think that there's probably some people out there that maybe don't understand, maybe more so now that we've had some time to process. But I remember when this first started and people were like, okay, it's another forest fire and some houses have burned. It's all rich people and they shouldn't be living in that area anyway in their big fancy houses. And it's like, no, people don't understand. If you're not from California, you don't quite get it. Now, maybe in your area where you have a similar kind of issue we do with forest fires, a lot of people in other parts of the country just thought, oh, this is just another forest fire. They got out of control because California doesn't have enough water. And I can't tell you how much further from the truth that could be. It was a true firestorm. I mean, we had 100-mile-an-hour winds. And usually when we have a forest fire, we might lose a few houses. Like, that's a big deal for us. When we lose 5 or 10 homes, that's a big deal. And to have an event where we lose thousands, 4, 5, 6,000 structures. I think the total number is like about 6,000 homes and about another 2,000 businesses. So around like the 7,000, 8,000 number range for structures lost. That is catastrophic. And it's going to take a long time to fix that. So I think that insurance companies are starting to realize, wait a minute, like, it's not just homes in hillsides or close to brush. These could be homes that we think are further insulated. But when you have a major natural disaster or an event like the windstorm that we had, things can go south very, very quickly. And the destruction in that area is, you cannot put it into words. It's almost worse than if a bomb went off, because of the remnants of people's lives that still do exist.
Yeah, and I know you've been personally impacted with friends and family that have lost homes throughout that as well.
Yeah, and even the people that didn't lose their homes, which is the crazy part, let's say, and in Altadena, there's no rhyme or reason as to what homes burned or why. I mean, it really was like, if you were just lucky and the wind didn't blow your way and an ember didn't land, on your property, your home made it. If you were unlucky and the wind blew and an ember landed somewhere, your home burned down. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason to what homes burned. And so you'll see on the satellite imagery, you'll go, oh, well, there's one that looks mostly untouched. Those people, thankfully, still have their home and they still have, a place to live. They don't. They can't inhabit that home. The amount of toxic material that's around, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of utilities, natural gas, water, power, still don't have that in the area. People can't live in their home. So even if you didn't lose your home, you are still displaced and you're having to probably do a home insurance claim for interim living for an apartment or your rental or whatever. So, even the people that quote unquote, got out of it, they didn't really get out of it because at the end of the day, their entire community is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely devastating. And this is like some of the realities that we could potentially face in Central Washington with losing. Right now, where it's reported that we've lost 200 million in Washington state funding, government funding. And not all of these employees that are firefighters work directly for the Forest Service. I think that that's something really important to remember, that a lot of firefighters are contracted. And I think that the way that the system works seems to work really well because it allows these firefighters to have mobility. When there's no fires in Washington, we can send firefighters to California and vice versa. But they're funded with these government dollars, and without having them, it just really makes me nervous for anyone. And these firefighters, they're not just going to California; they're going to, Nevada or Colorado or wherever needs that resource at that time. And then we just talk about like the prescribed burns and what we do for maintenance of these forests to try and help reduce that risk.
Mm-hmm.
And reading through some articles, they're talking about, just these short amount of layoffs that are happening right now. Even if the government decides to like change its mind come August when we need everybody, those people aren't going to be there, right? They've already moved on. They've already replaced that job with something else. And the residual impact of this could be, losing a lot of firefighters. And then those kids that are dreaming of being firefighters deciding like it's not a stable career, right? Like there's such huge impacts that could potentially happen from this. It can really affect our housing. It can affect our mortgages. It's going to affect our insurance rates. So without being all doom and gloom, what does this mean for the future of housing? Like, what do you think is going to come out of this?
That's a good question. And this is something that, I've been thinking about. I've talked with a couple other people on their streams and talked about on my stream a little bit. And I can only speak for what I think's, going to happen in my area. I think what's going to happen, we've already seen insurers pull out of California before the fires. There's a lot of different reasons for that. I think the biggest reason is that the California Insurance Commission tried to, and I don't blame them, but I think the California Insurance Commission tried to, for too long of a time, keep insurance prices suppressed. Now, and as a consumer, you're like, great, a commission that's keeping prices down for the consumer, that's a good thing. Yes, it is. But then you have an event like this where all of a sudden we have to charge more for insurance because of the cost to rebuild, the cost for any type of emergency services, just the general cost of things. And now you're seeing people that are getting huge increases in their premiums because they weren't allowed to be increased previously. So it's a little bit of a double hit. Not only are their rates going up, but the rates have to go up substantially because they've been kept low for so long. And the insurance companies are finally got to the point where they said, listen, you've kept the rates low for so long, we can't make any money. So we're just not going to give anybody insurance here. And then, of course, people go, no, but wait, we need the insurance. We need you. So how about if we let you charge them more? Okay, fine. If we can charge them more, we can. So I think the first kind of issue is the fact that since the mid to late 80s, the Insurance Commission has been very strict with insurance companies in not being able to raise rates, which has added some stress to homeowners, unfortunately. I think moving forward, what we're going to see is we're going to see some changes in the way that homes are built. And I think that this will apply first in California. And then I think this is all hypothetical. This is all just what I think. And then I think it's going to trickle to Oregon and Washington. California typically tends to lead the way on a lot of legislation related items. And I think that will be the case here. And I think what we're going to see is, I think we're going to see insurance providers say, okay, we will insure homes in California because after all, there is money to be made, right? I mean, there's a lot of homes in California. If you've got a mortgage, you got to have insurance. So, you know, the insurance companies want to be here, but they want to make money more than anything else. So I think what's going to happen is this. I think you're going to have insurance companies that are going to work with the state to revise some building codes. And I would not be surprised to see if we have a new mandate in building codes that will make it so that all eaves must be boxed. So right now, when you walk out to your house and you look up and you look at that little overhang between your house and where the gutter is, that's your eave, and you can see rafter tails in there if you look up. And a lot of times there will be little vents so that hot air from your attic so your house can breathe basically, and hot air can get out. Well, that's where embers get in. And in a mass fire event like what they had in Altadena, the firefighters are very, very transparent. When they are short on resources and there's a lot of fire to fight, if you get an ember and your attic starts to smoke or catch fire, they don't try to even save your house. It's gone. They let it burn. So I think it's going to be important for insurance companies to see that home builders and homeowners are doing what they can to prevent homes from burning down. So I think the first thing will be boxed eaves. I think that'll be the first thing that we see. And I don't know, Amanda, if you guys have that issue in Washington, or if you've heard anything about that, but is that something that you see? Like, do a lot of homes have closed eaves, or are they open and exposed?
Most eaves are pretty open, and it's a very trending thing. However, what we do have in Central Washington, there is some building codes in certain areas in the region. It is required for sprinkler systems to be installed in homes, which can be a double-edged sword. Let me tell you, I've had some experiences with sprinkler systems and failure and stuff, but if that's what it takes to help with those premiums and just making sure that you're keeping them maintained. We're seeing other building code where, the ceramic tile roofing is required. And I think that what we're going to see is, you're absolutely right. We're going to start seeing builders building and code changing towards more fire efficient, I suppose, cement siding, different types of construction, which is great on a safety factor. But then when you pull affordability into something,
yep,
that's really tough. That's really tough to do.
And I guess if the idea is, well, the home's going to cost more, but your insurance will be cheaper and you'll be able to get it, then maybe that's a worthwhile trade-off. But I guess, that remains to be seen. And obviously, if they're going to make these changes, the reason that we don't have closed eaves anymore is for cost. That's why they're open. Builders in the 60s, at least in my area, in the late 60s, all the way up to the late 60s, you got boxed eaves. That was how they built the house.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously one day a builder went, wait a minute, why are we spending more money on plywood, labor, paint, and stucco to close that in? We could just leave it open and bingo. So, I think that's going to be one of those things that we'll see. I also think, in our area, any home built after 1995 has to have interior fire sprinklers.
Yeah.
So all homes built after that period do have sprinklers on the inside, but as you mentioned, sprinklers are a double-edged sword. Yes, they might save your house from burning down, but now your house is flooded. So I guess, flood is better than fire, right? Because at least flood doesn't destroy the structure. You might have to get rid of the flooring and some drywall and, do some things, but it's not just gone, from the earth. So that, I guess, is slightly more desirable. What I think is probably going to be a more likely thing that we're going to see, and especially in your area and in areas like my area where I'm close to the hillsides, I think we are also going to see that homes that are within a certain area of open space, open land, or wild land, I think we're going to start to see fire defensive exterior sprinklers as a requirement. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see two different versions of this. I think we're going to see if you have a lot that immediately backs up to hillside or open space, I think there will be new requirements that will require you to have some type of high flow sprinkler system that will basically act as defense. So imagine if you had your backyard and then you had a fence, and then right on the other side of your fence, if you just had open space, open land, right? Like you're like, oh, the wilderness, it's great. Well, on the other side of that fence, I think they're going to require you to have sprinklers, every 10 or 12 or 15 feet with a certain spray pattern that puts out a certain amount of water. And that way you can extend that defensive zone around your home. I think that's also another thing that we're going to see. And then those sprinklers would be activated either manually or, potentially by some type of heat activated switch or, something like that.
Like a little sprinkler pen, it breaks when it gets too close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The exact same thing.
Yeah. I'm really curious. That is a fantastic idea, kind of brilliant. But I wondered about capabilities of water pressure.
Yep.
I mean, I know in my neighborhood, if too many people have their sprinklers on, my pressure is terrible.
Yep.
So,
and that's going to be something that, has to be figured out. We don't have, and it's so funny because everybody knows that, like California, and we have droughts and we don't have water and we can't water our lawns for periods. And, then it does rain and it's okay. And, I think that if every house did that, it could be a problem. But that'll be for the builders and the cities to figure out. I mean, they're going to have to do something. I do also think that there could be a potential where instead of using water, it's a system that does some type of fire retardant, and then it wouldn't require the water resource. And then you could just have the fire retardant, in some type of tank. It's still going to increase the cost of your home because now you have all these systems. And let's say you did have a sprinkler system. Okay, well, is there going to be a mandate that says every 10 years it has to be inspected and certified? Then you have to pay for that, right? So at the end of the day, we can come up with all these ideas, but it's still going to lead to more expense, regardless of what happens. So, it's just going to be something that it's complicated. There's no clear-cut answer, but certainly some changes are definitely going to have to be made.
Yeah. Washington State, we just got a new insurance commissioner. Just came into office for the first time, and God, I don't know how long, over a decade, I think. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But let's go back to that clip, and Jerome Powell has a few more words for us.
Not only observing that insurance is becoming increasingly difficult to get in states like California, but about a decade from now, because you can't get insurance, you won't be able to get a mortgage in parts of places like California. That's a simply mind-blowing thing for a man in his position to be saying, not least of which is because it's not wrong. Mortgage lenders will not extend loans to people unless they have insurance lined up. If you don't have insurance, you're not going to get a mortgage. And so Powell is just making the obvious observation here that indeed, if things play out as they are, there is no financial incentive to issue home loans in places like California. And that really underlines what I've been saying for a long time now, and that is climate change and multi-billion-dollar disasters like the LA fires are simply beyond the scope of most private insurers. To be able to manage that level of risk, you need to spread the risk among the entire population, which means something like a Medicare for all approach to property coverage. And this is the only way that you're able to keep affordable premiums as well. It's the same thing we've seen in the healthcare front. Single payer system spread the risk among the entire population, and they're able to keep premiums down. Places like America, which don't do that, we have the highest prices in the world. And what Powell is observing is if we can't get the risk of insurance in some way moderated so that mortgage lenders feel more comfortable, you don't get mortgages. And that obviously is creating a situation that's very, very dire. As Powell said,
it'll fall on homeowners and residents, but it'll also fall on state and local governments. Which you see happening now, where they're stepping in states where insurance is going away, private insurance. You're seeing states step in because they want those areas to remain prosperous.
And what that means, in short, is that this isn't just a problem for policyholders or would-be policyholders. It's a problem for taxpayers as well.
Yeah. Very, very interesting, and he makes a good point. And I the idea of like, oh, we might have to turn homeowners insurance into like a Medicare, Medicaid type of program. I could see that happening. And to be quite frank, I don't know if it's a bad. I don't think it's a bad idea. There's a lot that would have to get worked out. But if you think about it like this, like our friends and countrymen in North Carolina that just got like wiped out by a huge storm. I saw a thing today in Tennessee that 17 people died from flooding from a winter storm, right? And there's cases like this all over the United States. Texas, the deep freeze a couple winters ago, where people like inside their homes, it was 35 degrees because they didn't have enough power and whatnot. I think that a lot of people don't like the idea of, oh, I'll pay for what I need, you pay for what you need, and that will call it good. But at the end of the day, we got to look out for each other, and we're all American. And when someone in North Carolina faces a disaster, and someone in Tennessee faces a disaster, and someone in Washington faces a disaster, and then somebody in Altadena, California faces a disaster, we're all Americans in a crisis. And, I think it's one of those things where if we had insurance that was kind of a, type of national program subsidized by everyone, it kind of makes sense because, we need to help our countrymen that need help. And right now it's LA and Tennessee and North Carolina, but next year it could be Florida and could be Georgia. And the year after that, it could be Washington with fires. Who knows, right? So I think that could potentially be something that works. Obviously, the only thing that makes me nervous is then we have to hope the government gets it right. And it would be a big, expensive program, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah, with some of these budget cuts, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Probably not with the current administration.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, let's see where to go from here. I mean, what we're also going to see is, in these very desirable areas, people are still going to be moving there. People are still going to be buying homes there. What we're going to end up seeing is a lot more cash buyers, people who are okay with some risk, that risk of not having insurance. It hasn't seemed to impact any of the market stability. We started seeing some of these rates come up, like I mentioned, last summer. I want to say it was even longer ago than that. For the last 18 months, every 6 months, I get a thing from my insurance. We're raising your rates again, so it's been happening for a while, but it has not seemed to impact the appreciation of real estate in Central Washington. Which kind of surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that should be a good kind of a good reminder to people that just how many people want to own homes, just how many people want to be homeowners, and just how few homes we have. I mean, the fact that people are going, I don't care if it costs me $10K a year. I know it used to cost $2,000 a year to insure a home, and now it costs $10,000 a year. I don't care. I still want the home. I mean, that's a pretty impressive scenario to be in, where costs associated with doing or owning or buying something increase so much, but the desirability and demand doesn't really decrease at all. I mean, it just goes to show you what type of housing crisis we're in, because if we did have enough homes, if we did have enough affordable housing for people to have, we could see people go, okay, well, I don't need to deal with this, and I don't need to have insurance, and I'll just, the rent will be cheap because there's plenty of housing, and I'll just rent or whatever. And that's not, that's not an option. So it's interesting to see that even given all the difficulties with insurance, people are still going through it. I mean, the client that I was talking about earlier in the stream, where we had insurance issues with the house, the house is it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot, single story townhome, basically. The insurance for that's going to be $9,000 a year. It's a very generic house in a very generic neighborhood, and it's $9,000 a year. and there was no problem. You know, the buyers still would have bought it, and there was other buyers that would have bought it too. So it is remarkable to see the resilience of the real estate market and the value of real estate, even when there are substantial hurdles like home insurance that we're facing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I worry sometimes about the generations that come up behind us, right? And the affordability factor. This could push a lot more people towards renting as well. And ultimately, that's insurance is factored into your rent. So
Yep.
that's
As a renter,
you
still renter's insurance anyway. So, and if homeowners insurance goes up, well, your renter's insurance is going to go up. Now, renter's insurance is typically much more economical than homeowners insurance for obvious reasons, because you don't have to own, you're not insuring the house. But I do worry about that as well. I do worry about the Gen Zs and Generation Alpha that's coming up now that, I don't think we're going to have a very favorable housing market for buyers for probably still the next 5 to 8 years. I think that we're still feeling the repercussions of underbuilding for a decade in the 20 teens. And I think COVID only was a catalyst. COVID was not the event that made housing scarce. It was just the event that made us aware that housing is scarce. And so I do get concerned for those generations from affordability. Wages aren't rising that fast, but prices of homes and insurance certainly are. So it's a little scary. And if we have a nation of renters, that's not a good thing. We need to have homeowners. That's how people create wealth. That's how you create generational wealth. That's how you create stability in a home. And nothing against renting. Obviously, it fulfills a purpose and a need as well. But what's going to happen is if we get turned into a nation of renters, there's going to be a small group of people that own the land. Everyone else is going to be beholden to them. It's going to be like the Middle Ages again. I mean, that's why in the Middle Ages, it's like, oh, if you own land, you can vote. Like, that's how they separated people, right? And so we don't want to go back to one of those things. We need to keep home ownership available for as many people as we can, which is much easier said than done, unfortunately.
Yeah, not only to your points, but the whole ecosystem of an area, a town, right? When you have a town that is all wealthy people, who's there to service that? Who's there to teach the children and be the firefighter and be the doctor? And there is an ecosystem that needs to happen in every town in order for it to work effectively.
Yeah, that's it.
Homeownership and having places to live is a key component to that.
Yep. And we've seen that as evidenced in some of our urban areas that get very expensive. A great one is Pasadena, which is the city just south of Altadena. There's kind of sister cities, but they are different cities. And Pasadena is it's a nice place. It's expensive. It's a great place to live. There's a lot of wonderful amenities. There's a ton of stuff to do. It's very close to downtown LA. It's just a very, very nice place to live, unless you have children that need to go to public school, because the public schools are terrible because teachers can't afford to live there. So they don't attract good teachers, or teachers that have to commute from a very long way away, and they're not, as committed to their job as maybe they should be, because they got to drive an hour and a half each way every day, and they're already tired before they get there. So that's a great point, Amanda, is that even if you did have these cities that are, uber wealthy, uber luxury, well, who are going to be the people that, pump your gas or teach your kids or rotate your tires or fix the leak you have under your sink? It makes it difficult for those types of things to flourish.
Yeah. And I think that just ties back all into, the homeowners insurance, the affordability, some of the stuff that's coming down from the government right now, cutting firefighters, and there's just a ripple effect that we're going to see from all of this.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So anyways, Joe, I want to thank you so much for joining us and giving us perspective of kind of what happened in California and some thoughts on how how this could play out for us. It's all kind of crystal ball scenario today. And hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully, we get insurance back and we're not having these impacts with mortgages. We don't have to worry about these types of big idea concerns. So anyways, if you're out there and you are interested in the LA area, make sure to look up Joe. He also has a YouTube channel, so he's easy to find. And thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'm going to throw it out there one more time. Coming up with topics can be challenging for these live streams. So I would love some comments on what you want to hear about so we can be providing you with the information you want. So thank you all and have a great Tuesday.
Bye.